We talked about on a recent program also, we talked about the meaning of swerve or swerved. That has changed recently because now everybody thinks because of shit stain that it's some sudden illogical turn of events that makes no sense and surprises you. When in actuality, a swerve was always the confidence scheme that you were, when you swerved someone, you were manipulating their thinking to get something out of them. And actually, I did it off the top of my head, but I wanted to go to, and I'm not trying to sell this, by the way, my graphic novel Behind the Curtain. Don't order it if you don't have it for the next week. You should already have it. But there's a glossary of pro wrestling terms in it, and how that a lot of them these days, the meaning has changed because the guys themselves, the wrestlers, don't know where those words came from or how they were first applied or what they first meant. And then some fans have heard wrestling terms, but they misuse them. And I just wanted to read because what I put in here for swerve. Wait a minute. Okay. There we go. There's the S's. Swerve. I said originally a swerve was a con game. If you swerved someone, you were lying to them or manipulating their actions in order to profit or otherwise gain a benefit at their expense, all while making them think you were doing them a favor. In modern wrestling, it has somehow morphed into a combination of a surprise turn and a bait and switch tactic, i.e., the fans thought Austin was going to help Triple H, but he swerved them at the last minute and hit Triple H with a lawnmower. So I understand the fans not being able to use the terms properly because it's from a business that they're on the outside of and they're reading about. And sometimes the people that write these things that they read on the internet are outside the business as well. So they don't really know either. But now a lot of these days, the fucking wrestlers, they either don't use terms at all and don't know what they mean if you use them. So they look at you like you got turds hanging out of your mouth. Or they misuse terms themselves because they've learned them not from wrestling, but by reading the fucking shit on the internet that people who aren't in wrestling write. And it's been happening that way for about probably 15 or 20 years, but especially this past decade. A lot of times I'll go in the locker room and not understand what guys are saying, and I'll say something to them, and they'll, like I said, stare at me like I'm fucking a Martian with three heads. You know everything, obviously, but how many people do you think, they've surprised me with this, how many people do you think don't know what ballyhoo was, including people who would read it on the Raw format every week when that was the first line on the Raw format back in the 90s was Pyro Ballyhoo, item 1.
Right. See, that's what I was about to say is I think people know the word. I don't know if they know the proper use of it from the Raw formats. That's exactly where I was going to go was Pyro and Ballyhoo.
Well, and then, fans have heard that and they think that some of them thought it was pyro or the billboard of the show that the announcers do, which kind of is what they were describing there. But ballyhoo came from the bally in the carnivals at the athletic shows, or I'll read you from my book, Bally/Ballyhoo. In the carnivals, the bally was the platform or area outside the tents where the pitch man or stick man would entice the mark into the show. The ballyhoo was his spiel or pitch. More broadly, any type of hyperbole is called ballyhoo. And it was actually not only just a wrestling term, but it was a term used by a lot of sports writers in the 30s, 40s, 50s. The ballyhoo over the boxing scene or the ballyhoo over the football rules changes or whatever. But, now it's become like next pyro ballyhoo, like that's one fucking phrase. I'll look for a couple of more here. See if you think that anybody knows what these are these days. Encourage me somehow.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and do it. Everybody knows when you bury somebody, you make somebody look bad or weak or incapable of success, diminish their drawing power or stature, to the fans or the boys or whatever, you bury somebody.
I think that one is known, yes.
What about business match?
No, I doubt any young wrestlers are using that in the locker room.
A business match was from the early days of pro wrestling when two of the top guys would agree it's not going to be a full shoot. We're going to work the finish. It's sort of like a friendly shoot where we're going to agree to not beat the other, but we're still going to mostly shoot. It's a business match. It's kind of an offshoot of a friendly shoot. But it was an agreement, and the promoter didn't even have to be in on it, because in those days, the guys in the ring the top guys controlled what was going on. The promoters just promoted the fucking match. Everybody figured in.
That one, I don't know if people, you use it a lot. I don't know if people all know that one.
Because that's a thing and I'll say, as a matter of fact, at Ring of Honor one time, one of the referees was going to go make a McDonald's run. And I said, figure me in. And he's like, what? You want to go with us? I said, no, just if you were figured in the old days, and it became a broader expression that the wrestlers would use. But if you were figured in, it meant you were a main event guy. You were a guy that was integral to the roster and the booking plans. The booker had you figured into everything. It was good. You were one of the top guys. And then it became, broader. Hey, we're going to have a McDonald's run. Figure me in. I'll take a Big Mac, whatever. You're figured into whatever is going on in the situation. But now it's simple, but guys will fucking stare at you. We've mentioned before the Guerrilla Position was called the Guerrilla Position because of Gorilla Monsoon, and there really was no name for the position besides the curtain before that. Everybody knows now that hooker in wrestling is not the same thing as a hooker in other society. You had workers, and then you had shooters, and then the hookers trumped the shooters. Hey, Rube. Nobody says that anymore.
No one uses the term Rube anymore.
Well, but it became obviously nobody screams, hey, Rube, when there's a fight. Okay, here's the thing. Hey, Rube, according to the book, a brawl, riot, or out of control fight. In the carnivals, if a carny got into a fight with a mark or townie, the other carnies would yell, hey, Rube, to signal the rest to come help their brother. And obviously nobody's yelling, hey, Rube, at a riot anymore, but it became a phrase that you would use even when there wasn't a fight. Oh, yeah, Jesus Christ. He and fucking Brian got in a big hey, Rube over who was going to get the front seat. Or I pulled up to the building and there was a big hey, Rube going on in the fucking parking lot. And nobody does that anymore. The Rock killed Jabroni.
Yeah. That's now transcended wrestling.
Yeah, that's a mainstream word now.
You watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You ever see that episode? I think it's the one where Mac gets to shoot the puck at the hockey game. One of my favorite episodes. And he keeps calling Charlie a jabroni. He's like, hold on. This word jabroni, it is so cool. Where did it come from?
And he thought it was Zamboni or whatever the fuck. And it... Anyway, a couple more. Milk It. Nobody understands Milk It anymore. How can they not understand Milk It?
Well, you have a lot of lactose intolerant people in the wrestling business.
Well, Milk It, the act of teasing, delaying, or foreshadowing something to get maximum reaction for it. More broadly, if you constantly talk to somebody about something but never follow through on it, you're said to be milking them. As in, you've been milking me on this steak dinner for fucking ages. But when you'll say, now milk it, they'll go, what? Now milk it. Milk it. Don't just punch him in the face. Show the people you're going to punch him in the face. Let him sell back from the fear of you punching him in the face. Get him ready for the punch in the face and then punch him in the face. Nobody knows policemen anymore.
Because there aren't any.
Well, they don't have to be. Remember the famous wrestling magazine cover line, Terry Funk says, "I'm not my brother's policeman."
Yeah.
In the early days when you had to be worried about double crosses because they were happening and happened on a number of instances, the world champion had a policeman. And the policeman would be a dangerous shooter, a legitimate fucking wrestler. And if the champion was a gate attraction but not a real wrestler, then the champion would have a high-profile match with the policeman in a worked match, and he'd win. Then when a wrestler that was outside the trust of the promoters and the wrestlers in the group were making challenges to the world champion, then the champion could say, "Fine, as soon as you beat so-and-so, then I'll give you a title match. Because I've already beat him. If you can't beat him, what makes you think you can beat me?" That way it protected the champion in the eyes of the fans and the people from looking like that he was ducking anybody, but at the same time it kept him out of the ring against non-friendly challengers that would double-cross him and fucking hook him and take the belt. The policeman kept order. This is such cool stuff. They don't have any cool shit anymore. Anyway, I will go. This was one. They didn't say this in England. And when Adrian Street came to Tennessee, he didn't get it. Take a powder. Take a powder, which literally means make a hurried exit from somewhere, such as the ring, right? Take a powder, disappear, vanish. Well, Dundee sent the fucking finish over to me and Adrian and Linda in Nashville one time, written on a piece of paper. And so that, because the locker rooms were separate. And that's where I learned to give finishes, because I was the only one who could read Dundee's writing. So I'm giving them the finish. I've been in the business 3 months, but I'm giving Adrian and Linda the finish. I said, and then you guys take a powder. And he's what, like a fucking headache powder? What? I'm like, no. And I also found out there's a different meaning to fanny in England. When Dundee told fucking Miss Linda that the referee Thomas Marlin was going to bend her over his knee and spank her fanny one time, you should have seen the look on her face. Apparently, in England, fanny is a little bit further to the front. Anyway, Ed, you didn't know this?
No, just hearing you say it is fun.
What I was told at the time. And lastly, who shot John? Nobody says who shot John anymore.
Nobody. Mark David Chapman.
No, for heaven's sake, nobody actually got shot. Who shot John is nonsense, bullshit, or hogwash meant to con, confuse, or deceive somebody. As in, used in a sentence, don't give me that fucking who shot John about the mailman losing it. Where's my check? Right? It's blather. Bunch of who shot John. Don't buy that book that glossary is in. I think I did a pretty good job of talking him out of it just now.
What book?
Of buying the book. What book? Exactly. For fuck's sake. And here's one more thing that just grinds my gears. When I see people on Twitter or on the internet talking about, well, the way the match was booked, the booker booked this match for Brian to give Jim a belly-to-belly overhead fucking flying pancake or whatever. And they think that because now all this shit is so choreographed and pre-planned and scripted out and worked on by a producer and et cetera, that it was always this way, that these matches were so tightly controlled. And when do you think, what was it? Once again, was it the late 90s? Was it the rise of the network television modern era when it started to be that way, you think?
Maybe a little bit after that, but yeah.
But the booker, I don't know what the writers don't ever write the match. The writers write, like Shitstain in TNA. The only time he would come in the truck to be the producer of a segment is when it was talking. Even if there was a physical angle in the interview segment, he wouldn't have anything to do with that. He would want one of us, one of the wrestling producers, to handle that and to be in the truck to relay it and handle it with the talent. And because he considered that, not only he knew that he didn't know anything about it and he was fucking whistling stranger in paradise, but also he considered that the fucking less important part of the program. But contrary to popular belief, when wrestlers actually called things in the ring and this shit was done more on the fly so it would look a little more spontaneous and less pre-planned, the booker would decide how the match should go in terms of what the finish was, and if there were things you needed to do during the match to tie into so the finish made sense, he would suggest those, but otherwise, the wrestlers had the fucking match. That's why you tried to hire good wrestlers, so they'd go out and have a good match. If you hired wrestlers and gave them good finishes and they went out and had shitty matches, you got different fucking wrestlers. But you didn't tell them every move to make. A finish on a spot show, something simple, the booker might say, okay, Brian's the babyface and Jim's the heel, right? Let's go with real life. So the booker would say to me, Jim, have a good match, shine him up like a brand new penny, right? And then get some heat, and then fucking big comeback and a couple of false finishes, and then catch him with your fucking, whoever's going to win, catch him with your fucking finish, or whatever the case may be, or small package, or whatever. And the guys would go out and have a fucking match. Now, if it was Eddie Graham and it was the St. Petersburg Bayfront Center, I've had Kevin Sullivan tell me, I've had all the guys that worked Florida tell me, he would sit you down, everybody that was involved in the match, including the referee. That's why I've always done finishes this way. Everybody, including the referee that's in that ring and is around the ring or is going to run in or whatever, everybody involved sits down all together if possible. And if it's an angle for television or if it's a main event match on a big show and you go over this thing and everything means something, and Eddie Graham would give them a finish that lasted for fucking 8 or 10 minutes from the time they went into it till the time they paid it off. And there would be twists and turns. Maybe he would even call a second set of heat as part of the finish after the initial comeback. And then the babyface gets stopped again. And then there's another tag or another comeback. And then somebody, the referee is distracted for something, but it's only a 2 count and a kick out or a foot on the rope. And then you introduce somebody coming down to ringside. These complicated finishes that everybody had to be in a particular position, properly to pull it off. And everybody had to be distracted just so to pull it off, or there had to be a certain spotlight on each individual action where 2 things couldn't happen at the same time or you'd split people's attention. So it had to be bing over here on the left and then boom over on the right. And then something happens in the middle. And they were very intricate. And when the guys would go out and do it and they would fucking drive themselves crazy because they wanted to please Eddie Graham and they'd try to make sure that this was right and still looked spontaneous, but it was a natural happening, evolving of events that looked like it was happening completely accidentally as you were watching it. And then they'd come back and he'd be standing there and they'd go, "What about it, Eddie?" He'd say, "Well, it was pretty good, but you missed the 3rd drop kick." He'd catch the one thing that they missed in fucking 8 minutes or whatever. But that's why all those guys that worked Florida, it was the cream of the crop. They were so fucking talented. The main event guys, and they became bookers and they became top talents everywhere because he not only told them how to do these things, but he told them the timing and what the fans should see in what order and what spotlight should be on things. It's the same way I told guys in OVW how to execute the finishes so they made sense and looked believable and you hooked people, but you didn't leave them. But as far as calling a match, that once again was up to the wrestlers, and most of it, I've seen guys who were able to talk. And all they would do is mention a couple of spots. You'd 2 or 3 spots. Hey, how about we'll do this like we did in fucking El Paso or whatever, bing, bing, bing. Or let's do a spot here, or I've got a new thing that I'm doing, so I'll take this bump or whatever the fuck, a couple minutes. And then you'd go out and call it in the fucking ring. depending on how the people were fucking buying things. So I think that's why now that the matches, the matches that the guys at a high level have, they're so flawless, they're not real. Because nobody makes a mistake or even looks like a little herky, or you had to snatch something or something was a struggle to get. It's so fluid. It looks like a performance rather than a conflict. And I think pre-planning shit has damaged the matches in that regard. What do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's too much pre-planning of everything nowadays in wrestling. I guess if the crowd is silent, you can't listen to the crowd and base your match on that. But everything at this point is pre-planned in the back.
Well, yeah, in the empty arena, it'd be hard to listen to the crowd. But like when Ernie Ladd was a booker, right? Let's say Ernie Ladd's the booker, and he's given a finish to Magnum TA and Crusher Darso. Fat Darso. You wouldn't get any specifics on what you were supposed to do. You would get the story of your match, and then it would be up to you to go out and have that match to fulfill that story. Ding, 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 the bell rings. Darso, I need you to shine your baby face up like a brand new penny. Put a cape on the man because he's Superman. When it looks like he's going to hit the finish line on you, you cheat like the criminal you are, and you get some heat on him. Waltz him across Texas. Make him sell like he's going to the electric chair. He's going to be crying for his mother. You go for the coup de grace, but Maggie moves, and now the worm is turned. Magnum blows his comeback. The natives are going wild. He hits the belly to belly. But at the count of two, you get a leg on the ropes. And Magnum gets up because he thinks he's won, but the referee going to tell him you grab that belt from the table and you clock Magnum with it for the DQ right in front of God and everybody. And get some heat on him after the bell till the cavalry makes the save, but you take a powder before they can get to you. That's what the booker would tell you. And from that, fucking guys went out there and had their matches. That's why they all look different, because there's different people having them. It wasn't the same people setting them all up.
Another great Ernie Ladd. You've never done that one before.
Well, it just, that's the old, what's the word I'm searching for? The stereotype of Ernie is like, yeah, make him sell like he's going to the electric chair. He's going to be crying for his...
Put a cape on him, he's Superman? Is that what you said?
Put a cape on the man because he's Superman. It's just... He would say that, but you get the picture in your head that way of how the match is going, rather than if he said, now, when you grab him in a headlock and throw him off into the ropes, he'll take and shoulder tackle you. No, you want to paint the picture for the guys to go out and do their fucking thing.